All right, as I understand it, we have a quorum. Thank you all, intrepid participants in this process for joining us, either in person or virtually in this stormy day for much of California. I wanted to start off first by thanking our former chair, Chair Liu, for his 3.5 years of service on this committee. During that time period, we worked through the SB 339 road charge pilot design recommendations and rates, which was not a small matter, important step forward. And I know that the commission staff and the commissioners are looking at identifying a next chair coming up, so we'll be looking for that. And until then, I will be presiding as vice chair of the meeting. Couple of other acknowledgements. I wanted to thank Hannah Walter, who has moved on from this effort to a new promotional position at Caltrans. She worked with us for the last 3 years, and I want to thank her for her support and her efforts as well. And we are joined now by a new member of the Road Charge Committee and group. That is Frances Diaz-Sanchez, if I got that right. Very good. She has been managing recently the SB 1121 state and local transportation needs assessment process that we'll be getting into as well. I am eager as we start this year and as we have our first meeting of the year on a couple of fronts. I know some of us have been at this process for a long time, others are newer to the process. But as we look forward, we're going to be looking at SB 339 road charge pilot program, learning more about that. Also, we're going to be testing revenue collection and assessment of the impact of road charge rates on drivers. Also coming up are some outreach events on equity and road charge, and also this group's participation in the SB 1121 state and local transportation needs assessment. I also think we're at an inflection point with this group as we move forward and the sort of the deadline of 2030 for the ban on internal combustion engine vehicles, at least new vehicle sales come up. This issue is going to be more and more important. And I think the policy issues that this group has been chomping at the bit to get into, maybe beyond some of our charge, but nevertheless important issues that we need to address. I think that's going to become more the focus of discussions, and it has to be as we move forward. We can't just wait and hope the problem goes away or the solution comes to us. This group needs to be part of helping to move that forward in our discussions in our various spheres that we work with, including when we're talking to legislators, to the administration, to local agencies, to the public, and to others on this issue. Today for our agenda, we are going to be hearing from Caltrans with an update on the road charge program. Looking forward to that. We're also going to be hearing from folks from the Mileage-Based User Fee Alliance, the Eastern Transportation Coalition, and the University of Southern California. We'll be hearing about the National Motor Vehicle Per Mile User Fee Pilot Program, the complexity and diversity of trucking issues related to road charge. I'm sure Eric is going to be have his ears pricked up for that, and we'll be jumping in. And also an economic analysis of commercial vehicles as well. So with that, I want to turn it over to Justin for a few sort of ministerial items, including roll call and some instructions for this meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair Finnegan. I'll begin by calling the roll. Asha Agarwal.
Present.
Lisa Bartlett.
Here.
Terry Benzel. Vice Chair Finnegan.
Here.
Assemblymember Laura Friedman. Lauren Kay.
Here.
Jim Madaffer. Senator Josh Newman. Pam O'Connor.
Here.
Robert Poitras. Eric Sauer.
Present.
Stacy Atkins Salazar. Axel Santana.
Here.
Lee Tien.
Here.
Vice Chair Finnegan, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Thank you guys very much. And again, thanks for those in the room. Thanks for those participating virtually. This brings us to agenda item number 3, California.
He's got to give some
Ah,
instructions on how to.
never mind. I'm jumping the gun. Justin, tell us how this all works.
All right, before we move forward, I'll give you a few minor instructions. Welcome to the March 2024 Road Charge TAC meeting. The California Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee was established in 2014 by Senate Bill 1077 to study alternatives to the gas tax, gather public comment, and to make recommendations to the California State Transportation Agency regarding the design of a road charge pilot program. Today's meeting agenda can be found on our website at www.catc.ca.gov. American Sign Language translation is being provided for this meeting. You should see the translators on your screen. Members, should you have any questions or comments during the meeting, please let us know by raising your hand or otherwise get our attention on camera and wait for the chair to call on you. You can also send inquiries and comments through the questions tab that can be read to presenters and the audience on your behalf. Please mute your microphone except when you intend to speak to minimize outside noise and feedback. The chair will do his best to call on each of you in turn. We hope that you will turn on your camera while speaking, if you have one. Because we do not have a quorum present in person, every vote will need to be a roll call vote. Presenters, if you are on the agenda to make a presentation, please do your best to be succinct. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating service adequate time for accurate translations. We hope that you will also turn on your camera during your presentation, if you have one. Members of the public, we welcome comments from the public as a part of each item at this meeting. For those attending in person, please submit a speaker slip to the clerk, that's me, to let us know you want to comment on an item. For those attending via Zoom, you should see the webinar control panel likely located on the bottom of your screen. There you will find the raise hand and Q&A buttons. We encourage you to use the raise hand feature as soon as we reach the item to give the system time to acknowledge you. Committee staff will let you know when it's your turn to make your comment. Alternately, you may use the Q&A button to submit your comment. Committee staff will read the comment on your behalf. As a reminder, each registered attendee is provided a unique link and phone number to access the webinar. These should not be shared with other participants, as this can create confusion for staff when making comments. Please do your best to be concise. Please remember to speak at a steady pace to allow our translating services adequate time for accurate translations. Please make sure that your comments add new information. If you agree with the comments of a previous speaker, simply make that statement. We ask that you make your point in 3 minutes or less. If, for some reason, we have many speakers on any single topic, we reserve the right to limit comments to 1 minute if needed. Thank you for joining us today. We know your time is valuable and we appreciate you sharing some of it with us. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Justin. Sorry for jumping the gun there. That brings us now to agenda item number 3, California Transportation Commission Executive Director remarks.
Thank you, Steve. Good morning. It's good to see everyone here today online and in person. I want to start by highlighting a few membership and staff changes, and you've heard from Steve about some of those already. First, I want to echo Vice Chair Finnegan and thank Commissioner Liu for serving as the chair for the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee for the last 3 years. He was instrumental in the development and finalization of the SB 339 pilot design recommendations. He provided significant input and expertise in committee deliberations around how road charge policies and pilot design should consider important issues such as climate change, technology, and equity. His leadership and guidance will be missed, and I wish him the best. Commission staff will be working with the Commission Chair and the CalSTA Secretary to appoint a new Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee Chair by the May meeting. I also want to thank Vice Chair Finnegan for leading today's meeting. Thanks, Steve. I want to skip that part. I also want to take a moment to thank Hannah Walter, who served as the program manager for the Road Charge Technical Advisory Committee here at the Commission since 2019. Hannah accepted a promotional opportunity at Caltrans, and we're very proud of her last December. We will miss her guidance, dedication, commitment, and knowledge here at the Commission and with the Technical Advisory Committee. But I want to assure everyone Frances is equally dedicated and equally qualified to take the charge that she's been given. With that, I want to introduce Frances Diaz-Sanchez, who will be the new Road Charge Program Manager. Francis is also the program manager for the SB 1121 State and Local Transportation Needs Assessment, which you will hear about a little more today. This assessment will estimate future transportation revenue, including the impact of the transition to zero-emission vehicles. This assessment will identify the magnitude of the shortfall that exists between our current transportation revenue stream and our increasing needs, as well as potential policy solutions to address them. This work will help identify when a road charge may be needed and approximately how much revenue will be needed to be collected to maintain existing funding. This assessment and the related work of this committee are vitally important for California to ensure that it can realize its vision of a safe, equitable, and sustainable transportation system that generates economic growth and prosperity for us all. And with that, that concludes my remark, and I'm looking forward to the conversation today.
Great, thank you very much, Tanisha. And I think that 1121 process, as I noted a little bit earlier, really provides us with an opportunity to hammer home the importance of this work and the importance of the state, one way or another, moving forward productively and not waiting for a crisis to mount and get worse. So that brings us to item number 4, which is the approval of the minutes from our November 9th meeting in San Francisco, or virtual as people participated. Those minutes are part of the package of materials that you have and that were made available electronically. And with that, if there are no sort of comments or questions about it, I would ask for them. Go ahead, Pam.
Do I have to do something with this?
Yeah, press it, wait till it turns green.
Okay, what's going? Okay, I will move the minutes, but with a minor correction, and it's not substantive. Some of the time, my name is spelled O-R, some of the time in the minutes it's E-R. So it's just this typo spelling thing. I do it all the time, but with that correction, I move the minutes.
And I'll second.
Excellent. We have a slight correction, admonition, and a motion and a second. Any questions, comments, concerns? With that, if we could have a roll call vote.
Asha Agarwal,
Approve?
Lisa Bartlett,
Approve?
Terry Benzel, Vice Chair Steve Finnegan,
Yes?
Lauren Kay, Jim Madaffer, Pam O'Connor,
Yes.
Robert Poitras, Eric Sauer,
Yes.
Stacy Atkins Salazar, Axel Santana,
Approve.
Lee Tien,
Approve.
Vice Chair Finnegan, the item has been approved.
All right, thank you very much. And I wonder actually if Francis, if you could just remind us one of the items from those minutes, which is our plan for meetings for the rest of this year before we move forward. Just to go over the meeting date, so everyone's got that on their calendars.
This calendar year, we have scheduled 4 road charge meetings for the following dates. Today, March 1st, 2024. Friday, May 31st, 2024. Friday, July 26th, 2024. And the last meeting date, Friday, November 8th, 2024. All 4 meetings are planned in a hybrid format. In the event of any changes, the commission staff will notify the public prior to each meeting, providing information on whether the gathering will take place in person, virtually, or through a combination of both.
Great, thank you very much. And I understand, and I can see him now online virtually. We have Robert Poitras has joined us. Thank you and welcome.
Thank you very much. Great to join you. One of the things as a local elected that you do is you participate in Read Across America. And I read a Dr. Seuss book to a 3rd grade class at a local school. So if you want to know anything about Horton, just ask.
Awesome. That's great. Congratulations. I know AAA, we participated in that quite a bit as well. In fact, we put out a publication on distracted driving actually for kids to remind their parents. So we're trying every angle we possibly can.
Great.
I should have asked for this really before we took that last action, but are there any public comments at this stage?
Vice Chair, we're not seeing any requests for public comment.
Okay, no request for public comments at this point. All right, oops, go ahead.
It's actually Francis can answer probably this question. For the other 3 meetings for 2024, do we have the venues?
Venue, we do not have the venues set yet.
Okay,
So
just wanted to double check.
yes,
Thank you.
you're
But we are open to member suggestions.
okay.
Oh, why?
Hawaii.
I was gonna
It-
say it, but I didn't have to. All right.
In my dreams.
All right, thank you very much. That brings us to item number 5, which is member reports. And we always reserve a little bit of time at the beginning of these meetings to hear from members of the committee, their thoughts, any actions they've been taking on this front, and anything they want to share with the committee. I'll note just one thing. I worked with Lauren at Caltrans on a little bit of public information effort, encouraging people to participate in pilot. And that's going to be coming out in our member magazine to our 7.5 or so million members in Southern California with AAA. So appreciate that, Lauren, and we're happy to help out. We have a limited amount of space, so we don't have a lot of information, but it is one way that we're trying to share information about the issue and also people, the opportunity for people to participate. So with that, I'll open it up to any of the committee members for anything they want to share at this point.
Um,
Go ahead.
Earlier I think this year, I attended a Southern California Association of Governments meeting, and they had a presentation from someone from the national, representing National Road Charge. What was interesting there, again, with many of these organizations, you have new people coming in, but it was clear there was a lot of folks on the committee, Transportation Committee, who knew nothing about it. So I've suggested, and SCAC staff will be hopefully reaching out, because it would be great if we could have a presentation sometime, an update to our Southern California area, which represents the 6 counties, 190 some cities. Again, we've been a little quieter, but now we're picking up again, and working on that public education is really important. So hopefully we could get that to happen. And also, by the way, I was talking to somebody at LA County Metro who had forgotten this was even happening. So, but not that everybody at LA County Metro needs to know about this, but it still pointed out to me, and I know you all know, it's a heavy lift. And just on another thing, so when I was flying down here yesterday, Southwest, you can look at the TV channels. So I had the New York City News on, and then we're talking about which is slightly different, the congestion pricing project in New York. So they were having a public hearing about it that started at 3 p.m. our time. So I tuned in for a few minutes. It was interesting, their setup, because mostly it was to collect input from people. But they did a very good presentation at the beginning, just talking a little bit about how they were educating people on the concept. So I found that interesting and probably, kind of related to the challenge we have also, because that's a very new concept, and how they were framing it too was that it's going to help the many. So, and they kept framing it in that way, and not the few, but it would still help the few in a different way, and the few being, under the congestion pricing, those who would be paying the price. But again, the public benefit of it was important and was communicated well. So those are just a few comments.
Hey, thanks, Pam. And before we go to others, just a quick comment on SCAG. They have their annual event in the desert in May, I think it is. One of the focus in the last couple of years has been on zero emission vehicles. And this year that's going to continue, but with a twist that's going to focus primarily, as I understand it, on the transportation funding impacts. So that's an opportunity for SCAG and that whole group to get involved as well. And Lauren, did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to know, Lauren Berhoda with Caltrans, happy to come anywhere to share news about road charge, anywhere anyone needs. Again, there's often turnover and things like that. So if anyone wants me to come speak to a local group, always happy to do that. Please just feel free to reach out.
Thank you very much for that, Lauren, as well. And we've got a couple of other committee members who would like to speak. So if you can go ahead and jump in.
Yeah, I can start us off. Thank you, Vice Chair Finnegan. This is Axel Santana, Associate at PolicyLink. For those of you who are on the phone, I just want to share a document that has been developed by a few organizations titled Equity Principles for the California Road Charge. In parallel with this technical advisory committee, a group of advocates have been convening regularly to discuss the RUC and coalesce around equity issues associated with the design and implementation of a RUC. Many of you may be familiar with the Climate Plan Network. We have convened a subcommittee to co-develop a document that outlines equity principles for a RUC. I alluded to this document late last year, and it's finally ready to be shared and distributed widely. I have shared the principles document with staff and advisory committee members as well, but just wanted to take a few minutes today to share some of the top line recommendations that were developed. We understand there are resource capacity and data collection challenges around prioritizing equity in a RUC pilot, as we've been discussing over the last couple of years. But we really implore the state to make equity and climate resilience a core component of any future RUC program in order to help California meet our climate and equity goals. And so the recommendations are as follows. Number one is to enshrine equity in the fee structure by considering income. The RUC is an opportunity to price the transportation system more fairly. In its current form, the gas tax is regressive. Low-income drivers pay a far higher percentage of their income in fuel taxes than higher-income people. And some policymakers have proposed simply replacing the gas tax with a flat RUC, as we've been discussing. But we believe this runs the risk of repeating past harms by placing a disproportionate burden on low-income drivers and drivers without access to transportation alternatives. Number two, incentivize cleaner, safer vehicle use within the fee structure. We believe the RUC is an opportunity to incentivize Californians to drive safer, cleaner vehicles. The state should consider a RUC fee that charges upper income drivers with low efficiency and larger vehicles at a higher rate. And since this fee will be regressive, especially as low-income communities are transitioning more slowly to zero-emission vehicles, it's critical that the fee is paired with income-based variable fee, which I just recommended earlier. Number three is prioritize funding for core 4 priorities with revenues from the fee. California needs a multimodal approach to transportation to achieve the state's climate goals and to offer safe, affordable transportation options. RUC revenue should prioritize CALSTA's current core 4 goals of safety, equity, climate action, and economic prosperity by investing RUC revenues in road maintenance, as well as walking, biking, transit infrastructure, and transit operations that help reduce congestion and pollution. And lastly, number 4, support regional efforts to implement the RUC and alleviate traffic congestion. Several regional transportation plans in California call for the implementation of pricing to help meet climate, equity, and other goals. And we're in a pivotal moment where the state should take initiative to support regional and local governments in implementation. And streamline policy initiatives, equity goals, and technology will ease and improve this transition. And in closing, transportation planning decisions have been made for decades without consideration for and often at the expense of low-income and BIPOC communities. A well-designed RUC can not only help us achieve our climate goals by reducing VMT and GHG emissions, but also set a new course for an equitable society where everyone pays their fair share and simultaneously can access jobs, schools, grocery stores, community centers, and other services easily, safely, and affordably. The Climate Plan Network and other transportation advocates are ready and willing to work with decision makers and implementing agencies to ensure the RUC is designed and executed with equity, justice, and the environment in mind. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Axel. I appreciate that. And I think we're going to go to 2 more folks online, and then Lauren, or did you want to comment directly on that?
I just wanted to request that that report get shared with us as soon as it's available.
Okay.
It was shared with the additional materials that were sent out on Monday. So it's on our website. It is.
Oh, it's interesting because I clicked through that and I couldn't find anything else. Was there a link to it, I guess?
Yeah, it's labeled tab 5 handout on our website.
Got it. All right, thanks, and good question, Lon, appreciate that. Okay, back to virtual, Robert.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to mention that it's great to see that it appears that we're getting a lot more interest in road charge, and it's starting to now, rather than being something that is subsurface, it's reached the surface, and there's many places and many committees and so forth that are talking about it. In fact, at our annual CalCog conference, road charge and EVs and so forth were a big topic. And so I'm happy to see that occur. And so there's starting to be a lot more conversation, which we need to have. It was also interesting talking to some of the consultants at the CalCog conference, talking about the weight of electric vehicles. They seem to in some cases weigh more than internal combustion cars, and so could be more issues with electric cars on road maintenance, and so that's something to keep in mind, as well as things such as because of the weight, things as guardrails on freeways and highways where there's that may need to be upgraded in that regard. So but again, I'm happy to see that the topic of road charge finally starting to emerge, because we are going to start rapidly losing our ability to finance road construction and maintenance with our existing rate structure. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Robert, very much. Appreciate that optimistic look at how this is reaching the surface. I think it's critical that it reaches the surface and not just get kicked down the road. So another thought. Lee.
Real quick comment here is that even as privacy has been an issue throughout this process from the very beginning. And I just wanted to emphasize how today, in the current technological environment, the amount of data that is being shared through vehicles and via vehicles, whether with vendors or other parties, is significant, and that the privacy issues we've been trying to wrestle with here remain incredibly important. And this is something that we're seeing get heightened concern about in an age where a lot of folks are being tracked for reasons relating to, say, reproductive health, et cetera, et cetera. And so we're seeing a lot of concerns about the sensitivity of car data, not just location data, although that's where we started, but all sorts of data that is collected through the internal and external sensors of cars. So that's just something that I wanted to reiterate, that every entity in the government that is dealing with traffic issues has to be very, very acutely aware of the ways that location data is very sensitive. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, Lee, as always, for reminding us of the importance of that issue. Excuse me, and as vehicle technology has continued to advance, I think that's certainly a growing field and a growing issue as well. Robert, did you raise your hand again?
Yes, I did. And I, as an oversight on my part, I forgot to thank staff for presenting, having a road charge presentation at our recent Madera County Transportation Commission meeting. You all did a great job, and thanks so much. Thank you.
All right, thanks very much for that. Any other comments from anybody any other committee members in the room or virtual? Okay, great. Any public comments on this item?
Yes, we do have some online public comment, Vice Chair. I'm going to start with a written comment from Pete Stammis. What happens when someone refuses to be tracked? And now I'm going to take it to Hannah Krieger. Hannah, you should be unmuted.
Hi, folks. Hannah Krieger, Senior Program Manager with the Green Lining Institute, a research and public policy nonprofit advocating for racial equity. Road charge is a critical step in the right direction to finally have road users pay their fair share for their use of infrastructure. Just like transit users pay a fair share for their use of transit infrastructure. However, we need thoughtful guardrails in place to ensure the burden doesn't fall most heavily on low-income, rural, and tribal drivers and people who drive older, more polluting vehicles. And at the same time, we must ensure the revenue is targeted to provide benefits where it is needed most. Furthermore, road user charge revenue must be used for purposes far beyond just road construction and maintenance, which are largely responsible for our unsafe, congested, and broken transportation system. We must use this transition as an opportunity to create a more equitable and just transportation system. I wholeheartedly support the equity principles that committee member Axel Santana just shared. Specifically, some recommendations I want to reinforce is that road user charge should not only be aimed to generate revenue, it must also drive sustainable and equitable transportation options. Next, including a variable rate model is key to advancing equity. And then finally, it is critical to implement transparency and accountability measures to ensure that the public can track the flow of dollars and ensure they are invested in a way that's demonstrating measurable outcomes that align with the state's overarching goals. Thanks for the opportunity to provide public comment.
Thank you very much. Were there any other public comments?
Thank you, Hannah. We have one more from Zach Deutsch Gross.
Good morning, folks. Zach Deitch Gross, Policy Director at Transform. We work on housing and transportation issues in the Bay Area and throughout the state with a focus on equitable and climate-friendly solutions. I want to thank the TAC and CTC staff for their hard work on this important topic and echo the sentiments of Axel and Hannah. For Transform, the road user charge presents a rare opportunity to rebalance our transportation system and help achieve critical environmental and social goals set by the state. We believe piloting an income-based fee is a necessary step toward the long-term success of a road user charge. I also want to just point out that income discounts are already being implemented in some areas. For instance, in the Bay Area, MTC just started an 18-month trial program that gives discounts to qualified low-income drivers on the I-880 express lanes. Drivers with a household income of 200% of the federal poverty line or less get a 50% discount while driving solo and a 75% discount if they are two people and free if it is three people in the car. So this is already happening. I think that we would love to see an income pilot as the next step at the state level. So thank you for your time and consideration.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any other public comments?
There are not, Vice Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. And Lauren Prohoda, did you want to respond to the first question?
Yeah, just in regards to privacy and if someone does not wish to be tracked, we have tested multiple reporting options for mileage across many state pilots around the country. and everything that we look at, we provide options in the ways that people report their miles. So you can definitely choose a low-tech option that just reports the number of your miles without any location data whatsoever. Location is not needed for a statewide road charge. So you have that choice to choose how much data you want to share. And that's not necessarily in our last pilot. We just tested a high-tech reporting option because that was the focus of that pilot. But in the upcoming pilot, we will have those choices as well. So just wanted to provide that answer.
The commenter did ask a follow-up question, and how will that be verified?
So there's a number of different ways depending on the type of reporting option you choose. But let's talk about the most basic, which could be a third party reading your odometer. So that envision something like a trip to Jiffy Lube where a qualified technician reads your odometer and reports it and certifies that. So that's that kind of thing that we would use.
Thanks, Lauren, for that. I know, the privacy issue and also options for consumers has been central to, I think, the work of this group and many of the pilots as well. And, we don't know exactly how it's all going to play out, but I think that those are important watchwords, privacy and options as well. Okay, I think we're going to go on to agenda item number 6. Lauren Prohoda from Caltrans is going to give us an update on the SB 339 pilot, the national picture, and recent research as well. So, Lauren.
Vice Chair Finnegan, due to a time constraint, we're going to take item 7 first from Miss Barbara Rhodes. She's en route and about to get on a plane, so she really wants to make sure she gets the chance to present.
Gotcha. No problem. We can mix it up. So why don't you go ahead, Barbara?
Well, can you hear me? I don't
Yes.
have the best connection.
We
Yes,
can
we
hear
can
you.
hear you.
All right, thank you. I am talking about the National Motor Vehicle Per Mile User Fee Pilot Program. That's what I've been asked to speak on. And let's start with the first slide. For those of you that don't know, MBUFA, we can go to the next. We're a not-for-profit here in Washington, DC, and we work on road charging issues. I'll go to the next one. We'll talk a little bit about where we're at right now in the Infrastructure and Jobs Act. There was a specific ask. You can go to the next slide for when President Biden signed this in 2021 for $50 million for a national pilot. And I just want to back up and say that the US, when we do this, we will be the first nation in the world that has done a national pilot with light vehicles. So it's really being watched around the nation. We can go to the next slide. There was 125 million scheduled for road charging, 75 million of that's going to be for local MPOs, tribal nations, etc. But I'm here to talk about the national pilot. So let's go to the next slide and I'll tell you a little bit about that. It's $50 million over 5 years, as you can see. You can see the different points here, but the legislation was very prescriptive about what they needed and how they wanted this to be presented. Obviously, we're very late on this right now since the bill was signed in 21 and we're in 24. They're hoping to be able to move this along, but probably the thing that is most important right now is the National Advisory Board. And you can see the different items that they have. I'm not going to go through those because you can see that in the points. But right now, we can go to the next slide. I'll tell you where we're at with the National Advisory Panel. The Federal Register finally put out their notice for nominations in October. I believe it was October 3rd, if I remember correctly. And we've been told by committee staff they've had 70 respondents, and you can see that they've got quite a few different categories, but this is the official notice that have been put out. I think I'm hoping that a lot of people from California were nominated for this because it's an important voice for us to hear. Now, I'm going to go to the next slide because that's really starting to be the meat of this thing. Now, for the panelists, this is what's in the legislation, and this is what is required that they have on the National Advisory Panel. And you can see State Departments, public and private, working on VMT. They want trucking industry, data security, academic, consumer, advocacy, owners of motor vehicle fleets, operators of toll facilities. Well, you can just go on and on here. You see we have many, many different categories. And I believe they will at least have one and maybe more from each of these categories. Let's go to the next slide and we can talk a little bit about where we're at with this. MBUFA has put together a trial framework. This is quite old now. We've updated it a little bit and we're providing information to USDOT on some of the thoughts that we have with it. But I think we want to make sure that that we're very prescriptive in trying to be able to have the entire nation represented on this national trial. And even from these guidelines that we put together, probably I'd say 5.5 years ago now, the world's changed a lot since then. And there's been a lot of different pilots and different things that have come up so that we really believe there'll be very new information that'll be put together. The person running this pilot is a man named Jack Obiola, who has had extensive experience grants in the area of road charging, everything. I think he worked on the first California pilot, if I remember correctly, to the London congestion charge. So he's moving ahead on this right now. We believe as soon as the panel is named, and that will take a little while because this panel will be under the auspices of some of the they'll need reviews. They might have to have background checks, that kind of stuff. So it might take a little while, but once the panel gets started, they have up to 18 months to be able to put together the trial and then to do the report back to Congress. But I will say that I know that we have the committee staff and the senior leadership of the committees are very, very interested in moving this quickly. So that is where we're at right now with it. I wish I could say that we had already started. I'm very hopeful maybe by, I don't know, summer, we might have the people that have been nominated alerted so that we can begin the background checks. And as soon as as that is put together, I think we'll be looking very quickly at trying to be able to actually start the test. So with that, I'll just stop and I'll be open to any questions.
Hey, Barbara, thank you very much for that, and thanks for speaking up to get your item in the right time. Good information. I appreciate it. I think you know, some of us have been a little bit discouraged at the slow pace on the federal side for this, but hearing your report, I'm optimistic that that'll pick up steam and begin to move forward quickly. Comments from or questions from anybody, any on the committee about this or for Barbara?
Reagan National Airport. This is
I'm sorry.
No problem, Barbara. Appreciate it. Any questions or comments from committee members?
I have a quick one. Thank you so much, Barb. I always really appreciate your updates. I was just talking with someone who said he was talking with someone quite high up in USDOT who said they wouldn't even put the panel together likely until after the election. And it sounds like you've heard more optimistic things, but I just wanted to throw that out and see if you have heard anything along those lines.
I've heard the same thing, and you know, I don't think any of us truly know. Last year I had heard they weren't even going to do the panel, even put out the nominations till after the election, and then bingo, it happened. So I think it's just on a pace that is slow. It might have some political involvement. I can't be certain that that hasn't happened, but I actually think that I do know that the two committee chairmen want this to get started, and they sent a letter when they still had not put together the Federal Register notice. I think the letter was sent, if I remember right, I can't remember, last May, June something, and then the Federal Register came out, and then they are even if USDOT does not want to do this, the two committee chairmen are very, very anxious to get this done. So I think the two combinations, I have to say, I'm not sure. But given we're already at March and we don't even have the name of the panelists out yet, and given how long the background checks take usually for federal appointments, I think that we want to make sure that we're ready, but it would not surprise me if it was after the election. But I'm hopeful that with a little push from us and a few other people, we might be able to get it moving sooner than that.
Thank you very much.
Great, thank you, Asha. Any other questions from committee members for Barbara? Okay, any public comments on this item?
Not seeing any requests for public comment, Vice Chair.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much, Barbara. We will always appreciate your thoughts and your leadership on the issue, and we'll be staying connected, I'm sure.
All right, well, thank you very much, and for accommodating my schedule.
Absolutely. Anyone doing a presentation from an airport deserves something. Okay, so we're going to go back to item number 6 for Lauren Prahota for an update from Caltrans.
All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Always a joy to see you.
I should have a presentation, a slide presentation coming up here shortly, but while that's coming up, I do want to just take a moment to, as was noted at the beginning of the meeting, a number of staff changes. I, of course, had the privilege of working with Hannah closely, so I definitely appreciate the time and expertise she spent on this issue over the years. I did also, though, want to note another significant staff change. As you know, the study road charge in various legislation that's passed in the state is actually tasked to the California State Transportation Agency, which I have the privilege to support. In February, we had the departure of Lori Pepper, who was the Deputy Secretary for Innovative Mobility Solutions. Perhaps not as visible here at this meeting, but very involved in the road charge issue. Hannah and Lori and I actually started working on this within a couple of weeks of each other. So the departure of these two great women leaders will definitely be felt, and I did just want to take a moment to recognize their contributions to the state as we all try to explore how we're going to address the future of transportation funding. So thank you to both Hannah and Lori. So brief program update, if you want to go to the next slide. So first, I wanted to touch on the recommendations that this body put together for the SB 339 pilot. We've been going through those with our consultant team as the design for the pilot is underway. And I'm happy to report that around 85% of the recommendations we were able to absorb into the design. Some of these, there were some that we could only partially implement or not implement, and these are some of them are listed here. The majority of them had to do with issues around really recommendations that relate to really the system that the state of Oregon has rather than California has, or they were really more directed towards an ultimate program, full program, rather than specifically to a pilot. But I do want to specifically call two recommendations out. The first is the size of the pilot. We are not able to do the recruitment size that the TAC recommended. This is largely a budget issue. However, we have stretched the size as much as we can given the resources we were given through the budget process. We are aiming for a pilot split into two groups of 800 total recruits. So there'll be 400 in each group. And that's as much as we can stretch the budget to. Also thinking about the commercial vehicle recommendations, we're also on top of that saving some slots for members of the legislature to participate. We haven't really had members of the legislature in a pilot since our original one in 2017. There's been some turnover, probably some opportunities for re-education with the members of the legislature, so we are going to invite them to participate in this pilot. The other recommendation given about having the DMV run the pilot is not something that we could really do. The budget resources were assigned to Caltrans. It's not something that we can just switch over to another agency. However, we have been in consultation with DMV throughout. When we even awarded the contract, we had both the CTC and DMV staff on the ward panel. So they are very involved and aware of what we're doing and advising, but they can't actually manage the contract dollars that was assigned to Caltrans. So wanted to, yeah.
So you can't just subcontract with them? That's not something you can do?
No. When the budget passes, it specifically details staffing and contract dollars to specific agencies. So you can sometimes work out some memorandums of agreement, but it takes a lot of time, which again, we're trying to, the message from this group is a sense of urgency and move quickly. Also, there's a lot of, the DMV is very focused on a system-wide IT upgrade at the moment, which is a big priority for them. So we're having these ongoing conversations, but that was just not technically possible in the state process.
All right, that's disappointing.
All right, next slide, please. So I did want to just give some brief updates, what's happening nationally across states. The state of Washington did just release a new pilot report on some work they've done in the last year. Oklahoma has also released a pilot report about their Fair Miles program, which is very exciting. I wanted to highlight the state of Indiana. You see that there in purple. They did pass a bill last year, House Bill 1050, that created a road use charge for electric commercial vehicles. And I'm bringing this up because I think it's relevant to the presentations we're going to see today. So that's an interesting movement on the commercial vehicle side. Another layer to that is that the International Fuel Tax Agreement looked at that bill in Indiana, worked with the folks in Indiana as they were working on that legislation, and have adapted the reporting system for international commercial trucking to allow for the reporting of road use charging for commercial vehicles starting the beginning of this year. So we have the beginnings of a commercial vehicle RUC that's starting, and it's very small. There aren't that many commercial EVs out there yet. Even in California, I think the last time I checked, it's 612. So it's not a huge, it's not at scale yet, but it's an interesting development that these processes are beginning to be put in place. So, and of course, as we've noted, state of Hawaii last summer with the first mandatory road use charge bill is a very exciting development. Next slide, please. I also wanted to highlight a report that we recently released through RUC America, which is the financial impacts of a switch to a road use charge on supercommuters in California. This is a California-specific study, and what we looked at is just, this is the big issue in California, given the housing issues we have, the affordability issues we have. And I knew that it would be a point of concern to many elected officials. How does this potentially impact those who have to drive? You know, they really don't have that choice to drive. So this is posted on our website, but I think the interesting thing for me in the takeaway of this study was that unlike some of our other research into the impact to rural drivers or disadvantaged communities, there's actually not one typical supercommuter. There's an array, but you can kind of bring it together in kind of two types. So on the one hand, you have someone who's in the professional services industry, manager, that type of thing, who drives a very fuel efficient vehicle. So again, remember, it always comes down to the vehicles that people drive, right? So you have managers who tend to be white or Asian, who have these very fuel efficient vehicles. If we switch to road charge, they will end up paying more in state taxes. On the other hand, we have folks who are in the construction industry, extraction industries, things like that, who tend to be more Latino, African American, have the less fuel efficient vehicles, you know, trucks to transport tools, things like that. They will end up on average paying less because they have those less fuel efficient vehicles. So I think that's an interesting thing to look at. Obviously, there's much more detail in the study, so I do encourage interested folks to look at that. But this is just the continuation of the research that we're trying to do to understand all the impacts to different key groups throughout California so that we are just being very thorough and thoughtful as we move forward to considering this really fundamental change in our tax structure. So that next slide, I think that is all that I have for you today. So happy to take any questions.
Hey, thank you very much, Lauren. Any other questions from committee members for Lauren? Okay, I'm not seeing any. So thank you very much, Lauren. Are there any public comments on this item?
We did have an anonymous attendee ask to share this document, and so it will be on our website. We just found there's a glitch on our website, and the stuff we had posted, including that handout, we're not there. So it will be fixed very soon.
Yes.
No other public comments.
Yes, and it is currently on our website, caroadcharge.com as well.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, that brings us to item number 8. We're going to keep plowing forward if that's okay with everybody. So this is on the motor carrier industry mileage-based user fee and road usage charge overview. And we're going to be hearing from Mary Grace Parker from the Eastern Transportation Coalition, who I think we have interacted with and heard from in the past, as I recall, or at least certainly have heard about. So Mary Grace, are you on?
We do see her online. Mary Grace, you can turn on your camera and open your mic whenever you're ready.
And is she responding?
No, we have not hearing from her.
Okay, Mary Grace, if you can hear us, this is your opportunity on agenda item number 8. If you want to turn your camera on and unmute.
May I propose that we move to the next item, and then if Mary Grace reappears later, we could take her then?
Now that's known as leadership. Thank you very much. We will do that. So let's move to item number 9, which is economic analysis of commercial vehicle road user charges. And we're going to be joined by someone who I've known for decades and respect a lot, Dr. Jen Giuliano from USC. Jen, are you on?
I'm on, and can you all hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and I also have slides. And I'm going to apologize in advance. This is a much more technical numerical presentation than the other ones. But if you have any questions, just let me know. So could we get the slides up? There we go. Okay. This is a project that we did actually for Caltrans. And Lauren, who just spoke, was one of the people who helped to guide us in this study. So Lauren, I'm glad to hear all the things that are going on at Caltrans since we've done this. What we were asked to do was to look at what would happen if we instituted commercial vehicle road user charges in the state of California under a couple of scenarios. Most of them having to do with developing a revenue neutral charge. And we wanted to know, first of all, how would the charges change? Who's paying what? Secondly, we wanted to know, can I have the next slide, please? Secondly, we wanted to know what kinds of economic impacts it would have on the state's economy. And thirdly, we wanted to know about distributional impacts. I can skip this slide because you've already heard something about it. Keep going. So as I just mentioned, these are the things that we wanted to do. Keep going. So this is what we did. This is kind of a diagram of all the parts of what we did. So we started out with policy scenarios, and those scenarios were worked out with Caltrans, with the road user charge group within Caltrans. And I'll talk about them in a minute. The first thing then, the first piece of the analysis is to look at what we call the direct impacts of the road user charge, and that is who ends up paying and what is the change in the distribution, and is there any change in tax revenue if we don't go revenue neutral. Then what we do is we use an economic input-output model, and we plug all of the information we have from the direct impacts into that model, and it gives us the macroeconomic impacts of the policy. And how does it affect gross state product? How does it affect jobs? How does it affect income? And we can also look at impacts at the sectoral level, meaning different industry sectors. And we can also look at the rest of the world. In other words, what it does, do these policies have any effect in terms of shifting business in or out of California? And then the final step is to use an additional model, that actually looks at the distributional impacts, and that's, you know, how do these impacts end up at the end of the day across different income groups within California. Next step. Next slide, please. So here's our scenarios. The first one, scenario 1, is a fixed rate fee, meaning everybody pays exactly the same, that replaces the diesel taxes and is revenue neutral with respect to the diesel taxes. As we got involved in the study, we learned that in California, there's a discount on the diesel tax for agricultural product transportation. So we actually did 2 different scenarios. One is a fixed mileage fee for all trucks, meaning we get rid of the ag discount. And then the second one is to retain the ag discount. So that's the first one. That's just diesel taxes, and that's on fuel taxes. The second one is, okay, let's do diesel taxes plus the weight fees that the DMV charges. And again, we want it to be revenue neutral with respect to both the taxes and the weight fees. So what we did, again, is we use the same fixed per mile fee as in scenario 1, and then added a weight fee on top of that. And again, what we did was 2 scenarios, one where we eliminate the ag discount and the other one where we keep the ag discount. The third one is not net revenue neutral. That's the one where we say, what if we add an emission fee that is equivalent to the social costs of the emissions being generated? And what if we add that on top of the fixed rate fees that are revenue neutral? Okay. So that's what we do in the third one. Next slide. This is a list of where we got the data. If anybody is interested, really critical was the CalVias data, which gives us the census of trucks and so on. But that was probably the most critical data set. And then we used MFAC for fuel economy and some other things. We also, it turned out to be just a real adventure to get the weight things right. So I won't, you can read the report if you really want to learn all that detail, but that was also something that was very critical. Next slide. Okay, so here's where we start with the direct effects. And so it turns out that in order to be revenue neutral, the fee for scenario 1A, which means eliminating the ag discount, is about 10 cents per mile. And in 1B, we're splitting this up, right? So we give the discount to the ag products, and they're at about 7 cents a mile. And then everybody else is about 11 cents a mile. Now, if you look at the table here, the first column is the baseline, meaning what each class of vehicle, each class of truck is paying right now. And you will see, of course, that class 8 pays the lion's share of everything. And that's because, of course, there's about 42% of the entire fleet is class 8. If you go to scenario 1A, you will see that what happens is that the more fuel efficient trucks end up paying more. It's exactly the same story that you just heard from the previous speaker on the car side. And the trucks that are less fuel efficient pay somewhat less. So what happens is that class 8 pays a little bit less, about 11-12% with or without the discount, right? But the lighter trucks, especially class 3, end up paying a whole lot more. So that's scenario 1. Next. Next slide, please. There we go. Okay, scenario 2. So now we're adding the weight fees here. So again, the very first column gives you the total amount that's being paid today. Actually, in 2018 is our year that we used for revenues. The baseline is diesel taxes plus the weight fee as distributed today. And you can see again that it's class 8 that pays the huge amount of fees. Class 7, there's actually not many class 7 trucks. And that's actually why that number is pretty low. So if we look at the scenarios again, the same thing happens, but not to the same extent. That is to say, class 3 is paying more, but if you remember in scenario 1, their fees were more than doubled. Here, their fees are up about 46%. And class 8 pays only slightly less. Okay. So basically this is because the weight fee is not as large cumulatively as the diesel tax fee. So it is graduated according to damage, but not as greatly as at least in the current weight fees. The weight fees are not strictly related to pavement damage. When we calculated the weight fee for this, we used actual weight fee, pavement damage to allocate the fee. So we actually allocated our fees probably more heavily on class 8 than others. That nevertheless doesn't wash out the benefit that class 8 got from the difference in the diesel taxes. So again, these two scenarios are revenue neutral. The government gets exactly the same amount of money as they did before. Next slide. Okay, here's scenario 3. This is where we add the social cost fee. And the social cost fee is $623,000 per ton. So what we did, of course, was to estimate the emissions from all of these different classes, and then we assigned the fees based on those emissions. So when we do this, first of all, you can see that the fees for everybody increase a whole lot. So what I have there on the baseline is the baseline without the weight fees. That's just the diesel tax fees. So if I add on top of that the social cost fees, I am just about doubling revenue, as you can see on the bottom line there. And that doubling means that class 3s are looking at 3 times the amount of taxes that they're paying today. And class 8s are about 80% higher. Okay. They are, of course, class 8 is always paying the largest share of the fees because they are the largest share of the vehicles, the largest single share of the vehicles. So that's all the direct impact. So then our next task is to say, what's the economic impact of all this? So that's the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, so here what we have is all the scenarios in columns, 1A, 1B, etc. And then we have our measures for changes. So how much does total employment change? This is from the baseline. How much does state product change? How much does output change, etc. And you can see that the numbers are actually pretty small. And these are millions of dollars, by the way. So there's job years and there's millions of dollars of GSP, state product, and so on. And you can see that interestingly enough, it makes a difference as to whether we discount the ag fee or we don't. So if we discount the ag fee, then other people pay more. And for some reason, that actually generates losses. Whereas if we charge the fee across the board, that doesn't happen. Okay. Because it's revenue neutral, you don't expect much to actually happen, right? And what you see more is in the scenario 3, which is not net revenue neutral. And that's where you get losses kind of across the board. But these losses are minuscule relative to the California economy. One of the things I've learned in doing these studies is that if you're dealing with a $3 trillion economy, almost nothing matters, right, at that level. But nevertheless, you can see that there are some losses when it comes to assigning the social costs. Next slide. We then finally look at changes in labor income by income group. And again, you can see these are really tiny percentages. There's hardly any difference across income classes. And again, the only thing that kind of comes out is that in scenario 3, when we're basically doubling the charges, there is a slightly regressive impact here. Next slide. Okay, so here's basically our conclusions. The first one, of course, is that lighter trucks are going to pay more, and that's because they've got greater fuel economy. Excuse me for a second. I have a cold. The heavier trucks are going to pay more of the weight fee because of the way we structured it. And Class 8 always pays most of the emissions fee. As I said, the distributional effects are really minor. Because first of all, anything revenue neutral is going to have very little effect. And then secondly, when we're not revenue neutral, given the size of the economy, so sorry. My last point, if I can get it out. Excuse me for a second.
While Jen is trying to get her last point out, why don't we begin to open it up for questions, although I don't know that she will be able to hear us or respond, but maybe others can. Let me just give her another. What's that? Oh, Larry, you want to share something? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. I just wanted to share, the kind of the motivation in working with USC that we had on this project, which was really great to work with the USC team on. We've done a lot of research in the state on equity impacts on the passenger vehicle side of things, but I felt that that really hadn't been done on the commercial vehicle side of things. So that's really kind of the impetus for this project. Understanding how really it affects people's dinner table, right? We've done a lot of communications research where the public does call out, we need to make sure that those trucks, they're tearing up the road. And most people don't realize trucks pay weight fees on top of the gas tax already. But there's, this desire to make sure that trucks are part of this funding solution. At the same time, you can always respond, and what did you order on Amazon last night, right? There's that relationship between the public and trucking. So I wanted to understand, as we shifted our tax structure, would there be a change in who was affected in the pass-through costs? Again, getting back to that idea of the cost of food on dinner tables, particularly for low income. So that's specifically why we looked at this agricultural discount. Most people don't realize there's a discount in the diesel sales tax for the movement of agricultural goods. So that's a policy question as we shift to a RUC. Would the legislature want to continue such a discount? I don't know the answer to that question, but I want them to be informed in that choice, right? The other thing I want to point out about this study is we did have one rate for all commercial vehicles. You'll see from the upcoming presentation from ETC that there are potentially other rate structures that could be explored. So that's a factor in this as well. But again, just really a privilege to work with the USD team on this. I felt that this study really was needed in the national conversation. ETC has done so much to look into the commercial vehicle aspect of things, but I really wanted to understand these equity impacts in California on how we might, do some roadies charging on this side of things in our state. So just wanted to give you that context while we had a moment. But I think you can see here from the conclusions that we didn't see too much in terms of impact. Again, we're talking revenue neutral. Obviously, if it was not revenue neutral, those impacts would shift. But I think her final point here is that, if we did add in those emissions cost, raising the fee, that is an increase. And so it is going to have some impacts. And you saw some of those numbers there. So a very useful study. And again, I think a great addition to the body of work, research that's out there. So really wanted to make sure that this study got shared with you all. I don't know if we've got Jen back.
Yeah, I don't think she's back yet, but I will open it, and thank you very much, Lauren, for that. I will open it up to comments and questions. Obviously, if Jen is not back, she can't answer those questions. But why don't we start in the room with Lauren Kay, who had his hand up, and then we'll go online to Asha.
Well, actually, I've got a question for Jen, so.
Okay, you can hold it, or
I can hold it. I can maybe just say for the record that I think in a $3 trillion economy, there are things that do make a difference. And so I just wouldn't, but I do have a specific question on her methodology I'd like to ask.
Yeah, and I think that last point you made, and if Jen's able to come back, you can ask your question. But I think that's important as well. I think any particular policy change, even unless it's vast, may not have a significant impact, but cumulatively they can, obviously. And so that's something to keep in mind as well. Asha.
Yes, I'm really happy to have learned about this study. I think it's great that we have some more information about heavy duty vehicles. And my question, actually, Lauren, I'm guessing you could answer. I'm just trying to understand how the fee structure in scenarios 2 and 3 works. Could you just give us a quick sample, maybe some actual numbers? I'm just not able to envision it yet.
Yeah. Can't give you actual numbers, but basically, so the first scenario is just moving. So we're talking about which revenue streams we're moving over in scenarios 1 and 2. So scenario 1 is just the diesel excise tax and the diesel sales tax. That's it in a revenue neutral RUC rate. Scenario 2 is diesel excise tax, diesel sales tax, and the weight fees that trucks pay, rolling all of that into a RUC. What would that look like? And then
but my question is, how do you do that for the different classes? So is it everyone pays the base 10 cents per gallon, and then class 1 pays an extra 2 cents a gallon, and class 8 pays an extra 8 cents a gallon? Or I'm just trying to understand that at a very basic level how that works.
So this is a more basic analysis in that we're just taking all the revenue stream total and dividing it. So that means it's one rate for all classes. Now, again, that's not necessarily the only way you can approach this. ETC is going to be talking about a 4-class rate structure that they've explored that really tries to capture. So I'm not going to use the term weight because I know Eric will start twitching. But what it's trying to capture is the amount of fuel that it takes to push these vehicles, right? So if you get to a class 8, basic laws of physics and inertia, it's going to take more fuel. You have to buy more fuel to push that bigger truck than the smaller truck, right? So those 4 categories are trying to kind of capture, the fuel use that these different truck weights capture. We did not do that in this study. So this is a simpler version.
Okay, and I think I'm following. Thank you. So just to clarify, there was when distributing the weight fee into the mileage fee, there was no attempt to be revenue neutral by class of truck. Instead, it was adjusted as statewide. So presumably the low. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
And I see that Jen is back on camera. I hope you're doing okay, Jen. We had a little
try to talk.
little bit of a side discussion.
So sorry.
No, that's okay. We appreciate you joining us.
The only last point was that just to remember that with scenario 3, we didn't talk. The social benefits would probably offset those additional costs, which are not in the model.
Gotcha. Important note. Lauren K., did you want to ask Jen?
Yeah, I just had a question actually on scenario 3. And I just want to say for starters that I'm really interested to see this, to take a closer look at the study. It brings out some new information and I think very potentially useful information. But could you put up the slide on scenario 3 earlier? I want to know the earlier, again, that one. One of your assumptions is that the social cost fee was $623,250 per ton. And I was wondering what that social cost fee is for. Because if you look at let me just finish. If you look at the social cost of carbon, those fees are in the $40, $50, $100, maybe as high as $200 a ton. So this is, 3,000x of that. So I was wondering where that number came from.
Yeah, hold on, and I can get it to you. I can get it for you in just a second. We did. We did NOx, PM 2.5, which is the biggest piece. PM 2.5 is 306,000 per ton. Then we did SOx, we did NOx. And then we did the cost of carbon on top of that.
So you added together SOx, NOx, PM 2.5, and carbon, and you added them all together and came to a gross number?
Right.
Huh, okay.
And it sounds like, Jen, the small particulate matter was the lion's share. Is that right?
Yeah, it's the biggest part. Yes. Because it has the biggest health impacts. The benefit of per ton of reduced PM2 ranges from 580,000 to 750, depending on whether the vehicle is a heavy duty diesel or a light duty diesel, respectively.
And did you assume? Well, we don't need to get into detail. That's fine. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions or comments for Jen? Okay, thank you very much, Jen, and thanks to Caltrans as well for bringing this to our attention. It's interesting, and maybe others in the room are different than that. But I think that my knowledge of the truck charges, and Eric, my apologies to you, are limited. And I think this is good information to see how that plays out. And I think, again, a lot of these it's beginning to change, but a lot of these road charge efforts, are focusing on private passenger vehicles, and the trucks have to be part of it, and it can be a complicated issue. So with that, any public comments?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Yes, so we had a anonymous attendee send us a few public comments. I'll just read them consecutively. The amount of data being collected and utilized seems like super overkill. Do we have to be this exact? Why not build taxes and fees into everyone's annual registration fee? Will distributions vary based on vehicles operating in the urban versus rural? Considering the variance in road usage and maintenance, how will the local counties receive their fair share for all the county roads? In what way, higher or lower? All taxes and fees on commercial vehicles only get passed on to consumers. And the last comment, I believe, was part of the discussion with a member Agrawal. It's a volumetric rate. Why not just call it that? And I think we have a member with a hand up as well.
Okay, thank you very much. And Eric, I've been waiting for you to put your hand up on the side.
Yeah, no, really interesting information. Definitely lots to absorb. I'd just like to request some time to have a thorough review of the study and kind of the mechanics that went into it. So if I could, get together with Lauren and the team that put this together in the next few weeks, that'd be great.
Sounds good. I think that's a good model going forward. There is no, in my opinion, no such thing as too much information. And certainly with this kind of group that's looking into things in detail. So appreciate that. Thank you very much, Jen.
Just very briefly, there was another slide that I didn't get to. It's got the URL for the report. So you can just click on that URL and you'll be able to download the entire report.
And I'd ask if CTC staff could make sure that that gets out to the committee members. Paul?
Yeah, it should be on our website. Like I said, we're having a glitch on our website. It'll be up shortly.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you very much. I think that brings us to the end of that item. So thanks very much. So we're going to go back to item 8. And Mary Grace Parker, are you with us?
I am. Good afternoon. Can you
All
hear
right.
me okay?
Yeah, we can hear you fine.
I apologize for messing
ahead.
up your order. And I'll say good afternoon because I'm here in upstate New York with a little bit of high winds, and I live in a rural area, and we could talk about broadband challenges. So my buffering was a problem, but it seems like I'm back online. So I think you can hear me okay and see me, and I think you can pull up my presentation.
Great. Yes, we can hear and see you, and your presentation is up.
Great. Good afternoon. I'm pleased to be here today to talk a little bit to you about road usage charge and the motor carrier industry, the work that we've been doing in our corridor. And I think the title here, Bringing Complexity and Diversity of Truckers to the Table, is an important message. And when we can speak to, some of the issues that are much different for trucks than they are for cars, in the complexities of the world they live in and operate in, and even in the fee structures they operate in today. So I'm going to take a little bit of time today to go through some things. I may not be able to answer all of your technical questions about some of the data analytics. I've been involved more on the stakeholder involvement side, but I can certainly get you some answers if I don't have them, and I'll make sure you have a link to the website where the full report and findings are in place. So with that, next slide. So we've been doing a little bit of work in terms of mileage-based user fee work here at the Eastern Transportation Coalition. We've run a significant number of passenger vehicle pilots, and these are not only participant surveys and focus groups and pulling up a public opinion, but and doing some analysis on socioeconomic and equity and geographic considerations, but also looking at things like tolling and congestion and rate setting. And how they compare. But the key is that these pilots have been run with some real world participation of vehicles and operators. On the truck side, we've been doing some significant work. I think appreciate Lauren's comments. I think pretty much the leading work nationally in this area, commercial vehicle and RUC, doing about 3 commercial pilots now. They're real world pilots. We're developing a motor carrier working group with a diverse group of participants to get the perspectives of a very complex industry, and doing some rate setting studies that I'm going to speak a little bit about today, and particularly focused on our most recent phase 4 findings. Next slide, please. Just to give you a perspective of who the Eastern Transportation Coalition is and why this slide sort of speaks to why we're interested in this issue of road usage charge. We're a collective impact organization. We're basically, our board is the 18 state and District of Columbia Departments of Transportation, but we also include about 200 ancillary agencies, from DMVs to ports to others, all of which have a stake in mobility and safety through this Eastern Seaboard region. As you can see, we're a very large economy when we look at the perspective of the world, but also about 1/3 of the vehicle miles traveled both for cars and trucks nationally. So a key thing to recognize is, as a coalition, we don't take a position on endorsing a mileage-based user fee. And you can imagine by looking at this map, there's a diversity of opinions, policy, programmatically, politically, or otherwise. But the good opportunity for us is that by coming together as an organization and looking at this issue, states that may not be ready, or states that may be reticent or reluctant to look at a mileage-based user fee, or states that are actually participating in some pilots, get the opportunity to share in seeing the work that's been done, and hopefully bring that forward as they begin to consider this important need to think about financing infrastructure and dealing with a decreasing tax revenue based on gas and fuel tax. Next slide. So I think this sounds like a simple statement, that trucks cannot simply be treated as big cars, but I think it's an important statement because they can't. They're a very, very different type of entity. You've got about 63,000 miles of annually that a heavy truck will drive, compared to passenger vehicles. But yet, while they're big users of the system, they're also big payers of the system. So about 37% of the Highway Trust Fund revenue comes from trucks, in comparison to about a little over 9% of highway miles coming from other sources. So that's an important consideration. And I didn't use the slide here that I have, but sometimes I think it's a good one to use, especially when we have a public stakeholder, is to look at that complexity of fees that trucks pay. So there's probably about a dozen different fees, from things like fuel excise, from FET tax to tire tax, to a number of taxes that trucks pay on top of weight, distance, and fuel tax. So that's a consideration that's different than the way I drive my personal car versus the way the trucks that service and move our goods in this country operate. Next slide. To that line, our most recent pilot, which was run for about a 6-month period in 2022, what was exciting about that pilot, we had a significant miles driven, over 8 million, but we expanded our diversity of pilot vehicles in our fleet. So we had everything from large carriers and mega carriers down to some small carriers, one owner operator. We had about 250 plus trucks that were participating across all 49 states. But also we were able in this pilot to recruit a participant company that brought us some data by traveling in and out of 4 Canadian provinces. And that's pretty important, particularly to us on the Eastern Seaboard. We have a number of states that are moving goods in and out of Canada. And so recognizing what that distance tax type concept does when you start talking about going across international borders is another consideration. So that expanded diversity of a pilot fleet was important. We also started to look at weight-based rate setting and transparency. In our previous studies, we looked at rate that was based on fuel consumption, trying to use 1 or 2 mile per gallon, different scenarios, and we saw very quickly that that did not work. So our motor carrier working group, we actually recommended, as much as they don't like to talk about weights, and they certainly aren't endorsing an MBUF. We know what the national policy position is of the trucking industry in terms of their preferences to look at diesel tax and some alternative fuels. But the reality is that we have to look at weight, because right now we have about 5 different weight-based state individual programs going on. Connecticut was the fifth one to add in about 2 years ago. And what we learned from that is, again, there's an inconsistency even in those programs. So there's some lessons to be learned from looking at those type of weight distance tax programs to think about how that translates into a RUC. Also, the impact of uniformity on state sovereignty. So not every state is going to want to administer, operate, set a rate the same as others. We've learned that in other areas like tolling. So understanding that uniformity in state sovereignty is really important. And then last, we ran some clearinghouse proof of concepts, because one of the things I'll talk about is there are some avenues out there in terms of how to collect road usage charge fees, and trying to look at what that means in terms of what type of entities could potentially provide some lessons learned from the experience they've had over, probably several decades. Next slide. I'm going to focus on jumping to findings here. Again, there's a lot of information in the full report, but I want to kind of give you some of the highlights of our finding. So absolutely, we learned that you can apply a mileage-based user fee to all commercial motor vehicles. That's regardless of whether you use their weight, their fuel type, whether they travel internationally, and the type of operations. The important thing is to understand that inclusion of all CMVs would require some changes. So for example, right now you would have to include interstate operators and start to create some reporting requirements and differences that don't exist today. And that adds some complexity to both administrative costs, to concerns about evasion. As I pointed out, we already have 5 DT or weight distance tax systems in the nation, and all of them are different. So we have learned that there's some modifications to some existing frameworks, but we have to recognize that uniformity, simplicity, and scalability are important characteristics to meet for future use. And that's crucial that for states and their decisions on when they want to look at and move forward potentially with an MBUF. Setting up and understanding the impact assessment on carriers and jurisdictional agencies is crucial before we think about expanding a mileage-based user fee in the commercial vehicle area. Secondly, we know that a weight-based MBUF can provide a more transparent linkage between the usage and the cost of road use, which is a longtime concern of trucks. But what we know is that the consistency of fees paid by carriers today for road use is not the same when you look at vehicles, regardless of their weight. And the reality is that we want to really consider looking at all those different types of structures of vehicles, and recognize the importance of, for example, about a fraction of a time that a commercial vehicle operates, it is at its registered weight. So there's a balance to be found between the precision of looking at your charge and the complexity of applying it. The consensus in talking with our motor carrier group throughout this work is that it is important to have a simple, uniform application that's verifiable, doesn't place administrative burden in addition or compliance burdens on the motor carrier, and allowing us to be able to look at truck configurations and fluctuating weights at any given time. So we use this keep it simple statement a lot. But we know that rates can be set accordingly within a simple complex, making uniformity, interoperability, and scalability more achievable. Among this last pilot, we also did a case study to look at fuel usage among individual and comparable vehicles just within one company. And so if you take a look at that report, it was interesting using that real world data that there were comparable differences for vehicles within a company's fleet, based on their distance travel, their miles per gallon, the dates that they operated, how long they operated with any given time, and how that fuel consumed and the corresponding fuel tax was paid. So looking at evaluating that type of inconsistency even within one carrier is important. Next slide. And I apologize, it takes a second for mine to come up. Finding 3 is that uniformity doesn't have to be identical. And so when we say the word uniformity, there's a tendency for people to think that everything has to look exactly the same. But we're saying it doesn't have to be identical to be scalable. It has the potential, though, to substantially decrease administrative costs, both on the motor carrier and the agency side. So we've seen in other areas historically in the motor carrier commercial vehicle world, that complexity often can drive non-compliance and increase evasion potential. So taking a uniformity approach can minimize those complexities while providing that scalability. And again, I'll emphasize maintaining jurisdictional sovereignty. So the recommendation out of this report is to remember to strive for consistent operator and interoperability so that we can reduce those compliance costs among a very diverse group of reporting requirements. In terms of the clearinghouse frameworks, we looked at 3 clearinghouses, International Registration Plan, International Fuel Tax Agreement, or IFTA, and we used a tolling account manager, ClearRoads, to take a look and see how these existing clearinghouses might be able to provide some technical feasibility to be potential either frameworks or examples for EMBA usage, and both in terms of this project, we looked at how can we take some validation and processing system modifications and some recommendations on how those may work. I think a key point is that clearinghouse frameworks can be adapted to handle MBUF, but it's very important to work through some roles and responsibilities that need to be clearly defined. Those uniform requirements are essential for things like data security, system performance compliance, data protection, which is critical for motor carriers, as well as agencies, and again, maintaining that respect for state sovereignty. Next slide. When we talk about high-level takeaways, again, as I've noted, trucking is much more complex and diverse. A real key issue is we've had the motor carrier industry through all 4 of these pilots at the table. And even though it's a group that doesn't necessarily endorse a mileage-based user fee, they've come on board to recognize that their voice needs to be heard, that we need to have their input to understand the complexities of the operating environments they have. And that's been critical to our work to bring us to looking at things like examining weights versus looking at setting other rates based on miles per gallon or other approaches. Again, our work is telling us that we need to keep that focus on uniformity, simplicity, and scalability. We will say that MBUF shows promise for commercial vehicles, but it's not ready for implementation. And my background, which includes work in law enforcement and in tolling systems agencies, I think a caution that I take is I was involved in the Easy Pass initial implementation. And one of the things in that implementation was to hurry up and get it done and just apply an approach to electronic toll collection that didn't really think about even the operating world of our commercial vehicles at that time. They had different rate structures, they had different programs that included things like volume discounts. So it took a long time after we launched electronic toll collection in New York to actually come back and fix and kind of smooth out some of the challenges we created by jumping forward without recognizing the complexity of our own commercial vehicle accounts. So regardless of the method chosen, it's important in that alternative highway transportation funding solution to make that transition considerable of interoperability, scalability, and sovereignty. My last slide. Next, please. So there is more work to be done. So we're getting ready to launch our phase 5, as we call it, truck pilot. And in that, we want to focus on these things that I said. Again, those frameworks are great, and they show some promise, but we have to think about things like roles and responsibilities. It's critical to review roles and responsibilities. What would it mean in practice? What's the impact on stakeholders? Can we learn from that history, as I said, such as tolling? And then you can see kind of a chart here of how we think those needs and wants need to be considered. Next slide. I do have a couple more, I apologize. Next slide. So again, I thought I had one more. My apologies. I'm trying to kind of buffer here a little bit. So again, thinking about our work going forward, looking at roles and responsibilities, thinking about how do we look at operating systems within states, how they can potentially, where's the role of a DMV, where's the role of some of these other clearinghouses. We'll continue to do that moving forward. And I apologize for being a little disjointed here with this buffering. Any questions? But with that, I'll say thank you. And again, appreciate the opportunity to bring this to us. As you can see, if you go to this link here, TETC coalitionmf.org, you'll find the full truck pilot report on that website.
All right, thank you
Thank
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, Mayor Grace. We were able to hear everything and see everything, so I appreciate that. We'll open it up to questions in a second. Eric already has his hand up. But before that, I just wanted to note that I think your admonition there, or slogan, as it were, of keep it simple is such a good one. And obviously in the trucking world and the commercial world, it's inherently more complicated. But I think those are good watchwords for all of us as we consider this program going forward, and something we've certainly been talking about for quite a bit. Eric.
No, one of the things I was gonna say was, I echo what Steve just mentioned on the slogan, with the industry. And I really appreciate the information that you pushed out there, because it's very educational for people that don't understand the complexities that go into what needs to happen to operate a trucking company. And so it's not the one size fits all type of industry. There's so many different segments and there's so many different operations. So I really appreciate you putting that out there. And I believe you were at one of the ATA meetings at the mid-year conference. I thought the presentation there was very informative. Again, keep it simple. It seems like a lot of the feedback that you've been getting from your motor carrier participants is similar to what we've been hearing from our members in the working groups that we've kind of pulled together over the last, I don't know, 6-7 years. And again, just, more time is needed to go through this complexity. Obviously, like you're spot on, the industry, this isn't something that they fully embrace. But I think speaking from our membership, over the years, they understand, if you read the tea leaves, that there has to be some sort of solution, because if we're relying solely on the current funding mechanism and the penetration of electric vehicles, including in the commercial industry, we're going to be in for a rude awakening as far as transportation funding and our projects and improvements to the infrastructure. So I think we're there as far as understanding that we do need to find a solution. It's just getting there is going to be kind of the hard spot. But, that's where you pull together groups like what you're doing and what we've been doing in California, and hopefully we can flush those out. But again, I really appreciate the presentation. There's a lot of good information there.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. I think when you were at ATA, my executive director was presenting. She's much smoother than me on this.
You did a
but,
great job. So, yeah.
But I think one thing, I saw a comment from, I think from one of your public participants, and, the comment that it just gets passed on from trucks to the consumer. And I'm going to argue that that isn't true. That we've seen historically that as there's been rate increases in things like, and again, I think there's a lot to be learned from my time, at the New York State Thruway with tolling. It's not true that when you pass a cost on to trucks that it automatically gets passed back on. In many cases, especially when you start looking at, the large bulk of our trucks in this company are still small owner operators, small, medium-sized trucking companies. There's the big ones out there, but they're not what makes up a significant, overall portion. So I have seen over the years that when those fees get dropped on trucks because somebody says, we're going to do something with passenger cars and it's ... and trucks, without looking at these complexities and how it applies. And again, I'll go back to, those examples that we learned even at the Thruway in the 90s. The reality is that sometimes that it turns around into the reduction of their margins of profit or just operating expenses and revenue. And, from my background in law enforcement, I don't want the motor carrier industry. They want to pay their fair share. We do. I don't want to see margins drop to the point that folks have to make decisions between safety or improvements or efficiencies and new vehicles without recognizing that it doesn't always just get passed on. And my apologies to the person who wrote that, but I think I'm going to disagree with that statement.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions from the committee? Okay, any public comments? I think we may have gotten I'm sorry, Eric, do you have your hand up again?
No, I agree a little bit with that, but in California, you've seen over the last few years, many carriers implementing what they call a California surcharge. And so that
Okay.
is it directly in response to a lot of the rules and regulations that are imposed on the industry. So it's a little different.
Okay. Yeah, we haven't seen that really here on the East Coast, but again, those kind of reactions will happen, right? So as we think about the things we've talked about, how do you think about scalability and uniformity? How do you think about those complexities of carriers? As I said, there's some interesting things when you read the report, just looking at one company, right, with a fleet of vehicles and how that changed, including on a single truck, based on the operating environment, within a period of time. So hopefully, I appreciate the work you're doing, the work that Lauren and the folks are doing out there. As I said, starting this, we have 18 states. They're not all in the same place on where they look at some of these issues, but we hope that we're able to provide both for them and for the folks nationally some real world pilot experience and data that helps to smooth over some of the outlying questions that maybe aren't out there answered when you look at this from the perspective of passenger vehicles. So thank you again.
No, I do agree with you wholeheartedly on not wanting to see companies cheapen their safety policies or not be in compliance. And regardless of what we think of some of these rules and regulations, once they are regulations and they are the law, the expectation is that people are in compliance. And so I do agree with you that, you don't want to see that. Unfortunately, with these smaller fleets, maybe they're not in the position to leverage a pass through or raise the rate type of discussion with their customers. But again, it's one of those things that you just got to keep accounting for.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. No last comments, questions, public comment then?
We're not seeing any comment from the public at this time.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, that takes us to the end of our information items. Good information, good discussion on all these things. Before we go to a review of action items, I have been told that this is the last meeting for Axel Santana. Is that right, Axel?
Yes, it is.
Well, you will be missed, and I'm sure we will look forward to somebody else joining the committee to give, continue to give voice to many of the issues that you brought up in your time with us. So I want to thank you for your service on the committee.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to serve. And yeah, I look forward to keeping in touch and seeing how the work continues.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So why don't we move to item number 10, which is the review of action items, and I'll ask Francis to go over that. I don't think it'll be a very long list, but go ahead.
No, the only action item we took today was approving our meeting minutes with a correction to Pam O'Connor's name. So we will make those changes. And we do have we will look into the next venue for our May 31st TAC meeting. So those are the things I will follow up on, and then we will be providing those new staff update, well, not new staff updates, but membership updates at the next TAC meeting as well.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. That brings us to item number 11. Any additional public comment?
We are not seeing any more requests for public comment.
Okay, great. Before we go to item number 12, which is adjournment, any last comments, questions, advertorials from the committee? Lauren, sorry.
Thanks. I just wanted to know, I hope everyone found this kind of trucking focused meeting to be useful. I really worked with Francis on bringing this together because I think it's an area of discussion that we hadn't had too much time spent in, and I appreciate the work of the Eastern Transport Coalition in this space. But it's important specifically to California because, as we've done communications research, one of the things we hear from the public is those trucks. And, we don't want to paint trucks as evil, but the public very much wants them to be part of the solution. That trucks should be, moving to a road charge just like passenger vehicles. If you talk to the industry, they don't want to be the only ones to move to rec, right? They also, if that's going to happen, then passenger vehicles need to be part of the solution too. So I think, from a state perspective in California, that's why we kind of need to look at both moving, just because it is a concern on both sides that, having that really kind of complete potential tax transition in our structure. So really wanted to bring this forward to you today to show that there is a lot going out there that we're thinking about, working with stakeholders and things like that. But hopefully you really appreciated the information shared today.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. And I think, again, I want to give props to Eric for being a leader on this from the trucking industry across the country, obviously for California. Very much appreciate that and appreciate the work that Caltrans and the CTC and others are doing on this topic. Roads are shared responsibilities for everybody. That includes passenger vehicles, trucks, bicycles, pedestrians, transit, the whole bit. And I think it's vitally important that we keep that in mind going forward. So I appreciate that as well. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? Okay, with that, I think we will adjourn. So thank you guys very much for those in the room and those online for participating.